Hello. Today I'm going to talk to you about Greek myths and the lessons and values that we can glean from them. Today we read Greek myths as a form of entertainment. But at one point in history, Greek myths were seen as more than entertainment. They were used as parables to teach people how to live their day-to-day life. There were three main purposes of Greek myths. One was for worship and religion, and the other was to explain nature and science. And finally, Greek myths were used as a form of entertainment. Today I'm going to talk about a series of Greek values and lessons that show up time and time again in Greek myths. I'm going to spend special attention on the Odyssey and how these Greek values and lessons pop up in that particular epic poem. One Greek myth I'd like to talk to you today about is hospitality. It was important to respect and treat everyone with hospitality, including beggars and strangers. This is because it was not totally unheard of to have gods and goddesses come down to earth disguised as beggars and strangers to test their host to see whether their host would receive them kindly. If their host did not do this, then this was not good news for the host and often led to the host being killed. We see this pop up in the Odyssey in a couple different areas. One area is when Odysseus encounters Polyphemus, the Cyclops, and is horrified to see that Cyclops is eating his men. When he, demands that he be treated with hospitality, the Cyclops doesn't really care. And that's because Cyclops doesn't live by the normal rules that everybody else lives by. Another instance where this pops up is when Odysseus goes home and he is turned into a beggar by Athena and is received poorly as a guest. The suitors taunt him, they even throw furniture at him, and if you haven't read the story yet, you'll soon find out that this doesn't bode well for the suitors, and they are harshly punished. Another instance of Greek lessons popping up in the Odyssey is this idea of loyalty. Loyalty is highly rewarded virtue, while betrayal is a harshly punished vice. Now, the men and women that were loyal to Odysseus and his family in Odysseus's absence are rewarded greatly, while those who betrayed him in his absence are murdered. For instance, the handmaidens who stuck with the suitors and kind of worked with them against the family were all murdered. And so they were definitely punished harshly. Another Greek value that pops up in the Odyssey is this idea of revenge. Revenge is not only accepted in Greek myths, it is seen as necessary for maintaining one's honor. Today we kind of look at revenge as kind of a cheap thing to do and it's not really encouraged amongst our community, but revenge back then was a different story. We see this pop up in the Odyssey when Polyphemus, the Cyclops, is blinded by Odysseus, and Polyphemus's dad happens to be Poseidon, the god of the sea. And Poseidon definitely takes revenge on Odysseus by making his journey back home very difficult and time-consuming. Another instance of revenge that pops up in the story is when Odysseus's men eat Helios's cattle. Helios is the sun god, and he loves his cattle. And when they are murdered by Odysseus's men, he begs revenge from Zeus, and Zeus actually kills all the men with his thunderbolt, with the exception of Odysseus. Another value that pops up in many Greek myths is this idea of respect for the gods. Respecting the gods is a mortal's duty, and they did this by making offering, prayer, and kind of giving constant loyalty to a particular god or goddess. We see Odysseus do this with Athena, and Athena returns his favor in kind and kind of helps him out along the way. We also see that Poseidon and Helios are disrespected for the reasons mentioned before, and this doesn't really bode well for those who disrespected those gods. They end up being killed. Pride, otherwise known as hubris, can be a very dangerous thing and can lead to one's downfall. Odysseus's pride definitely gets in his way several times. For instance, when he escapes Polyphemus the Cyclops, he's made it onto a ship. Polyphemus doesn't know who's attacked him. And Odysseus his pride gets in his way because he has to yell out to Polyphemus and say, "Hey, it was me, Odysseus, who blinded you." And as a result, Polyphemus could call up his pop, Poseidon, and say, "Hey, Odysseus did this to me. We got to punish him." So if Odysseus hadn't had so much pride, then he probably would have gotten away with that dirty deed. Another Greek value or lesson that pops up in this story is this idea of prophecy. And prophecies are predictions that are unavoidable. Now, at one point, Odysseus has to travel to the underworld and visit the dead prophet Tiresias. Now, Tiresias warns Odysseus and his men that if they eat Helios's cattle, then bad things will happen to them. Odysseus takes this prophecy seriously, but unfortunately, it happened. It was unavoidable despite Odysseus' efforts, and as a result, all of his men die, with the exception of Odysseus. Another important Greek value and lesson that pops up in these stories is this idea of burial. Everyone must have a proper burial to have peace in the afterlife. And I would argue this is a value that still continues today. We don't just leave our dead lying on the couch indefinitely. We bury people and have certain ceremonies so that they have this ability to rest in peace. We see this pop up in the Odyssey when Odysseus travels to the underworld and he runs into one of his former men, Elpenor. Obviously, Elpenor has died. He died on the island in which they were held by Circe. He got drunk and fell off of a roof and was just left there to rot. And as a result, his spirit is not settled. So he makes Odysseus promise him to go back and bury him properly, and build a pyre for passing sailors to be able to see. Family is another Greek value that pops up in our story quite a bit. And loyalty to family is very important. Telemachus, Odysseus' son, never stops being loyal to Odysseus. Penelope, in spite of everything, is always loyal. And she fights off suitors and actually does her darndest to keep the suitors away from her and her family. She actually is weaving a burial shroud, and at the end of that burial shroud being completed, she is to marry another suitor. So every night she goes in and she undoes the work that she did that day. And as a result, she's able to stay the suitors for several years. They do unfortunately find her out. But again, this is a testament to her loyalty to her husband. Promises and oaths are another Greek value that pop up in our story quite a bit. Promises and oaths should be considered sacred and should never be broken. In our story, we have, as we mentioned earlier, Odysseus promised Elpenor that he's going to go back and bury him properly. And so this becomes super important because he does actually go back and follow through. We also see the promise of Penelope staying true to her husband, never straying or cheating on him, even though, I mean, her husband's been gone for 20 years by the time he returns, and most women probably would have moved on and remarried. But she stays completely loyal to her husband and to her wedding vows. Finally, we have intelligence as a Greek value. Odysseus, above all else, is smart, and being smart is important and is rewarded. And this is why Athena, goddess of wisdom, takes such favor on Odysseus, because he is intelligent. And we see him be intelligent throughout the Odyssey, especially in his encounter with the Cyclops. He uses his wit to get out of there. If he hadn't have been smart, they would have never escaped. It's only when his hubris, his pride, gets in the way that he doesn't make it home as fast as he probably should have. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you learned something today about Greek values and lessons and how they show up time and time again in different myths.